welcome back to the How to Podcast series. Now, when I work at night, I work overnight. While most people are sleeping, most normal people are sleeping. And one person who keeps me company all the time is Kristin Chadwick. And I was listening to her last night, and now she's on the screen with me right now. Like, talk about like a fanboy moment, because Kristin keeps me company all the time. And I love how she does her show. I love how she shows up for her community. Talk about a person who knows who she's talking to. Like, there's no question in my mind that Kristin knows her audience. And I can tell you that she's successful because she's super focused on who she talks to, and she serves them so well. And I feel welcomed every time I press play on her episodes. So, Kristin Chadwick, welcome to the How to Podcast series as my guest co-host. It is so great to have you here.
David, it is such an honor to be here. And even doing this forever, it feels like forever. It still is weird when you're like, oh, you hear? You hear me at night while you're working? That's so odd. So I always just am amazed at how podcasting opens up doors for us to meet people that maybe we never would have connected with outside of this world. So it's an honor to be here. And I love your shows and all of the many things that you do. And I want to learn from you today too. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, I don't know. It's a little imbalanced here because I've been listening to you like even way back at the beginning and sticking with you all the way through. When I listen, I commit. I really do commit. I am that person that goes back to episode 1. So I've followed you through all the different parts of your podcast. And again, I'm thrilled to have you here.
Yeah. Well, the feeling is very mutual. And I know who is listening in Canada on my stats. So,
yeah, isn't that cool? Yeah.
Wait, at least I know one of those listens.
So anything from Niagara Falls or St. Catharines, that's probably me. So
yes,
love
that's
it. Good. I love it. Okay, so tell everybody, Kristin, where you are in this great big world of ours.
Yeah, so I live in beautiful Colorado. I grew up half of my life in Georgia and then came here for college and never left. And so I've lived here longer than I grew up in Georgia, which always feels so weird. But this is home, beautiful Rocky Mountains. It's right outside my window. I can see Cheyenne Mountain, which is on the front range of Colorado Rocky Mountains. So I just love it here.
I saw some of your photos online on your social media, and I'm so jealous. Oh, it's so beautiful there. It's gorgeous.
Yes. Other than, we just had 3 days of snow days and almost, 2 feet of snow here in Colorado Springs is just crazy before Thanksgiving.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Wow. Wow.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So yeah, if you love snow, if you love mountains, and you want to meet a great human being, then go see Kristin for sure.
Yes.
Kristin, so tell us about your podcast. For those who haven't heard your show yet, we're obviously going to have links and we'll do all that stuff we do. But tell everybody about your show.
Yeah, so my show, its name is Podcast Coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs. And so my main focus is to really encourage not only Christian believers, but also everyone to use their voice, that everybody's voice deserves to be heard. Everybody deserves to be seen and everybody deserves to be known. And that goes for you as the podcast host and for your listener. So you are the voice for your listener that they may not know yet, but you're giving voice to what they're experiencing. So I love to encourage the brand new baby podcaster who is like, I don't even know where to start. I just like in your show, and just give them really practical, easy steps, simple steps to start a podcast. And then I also come alongside seasoned podcasters who maybe they've hit pod fade or they haven't recorded in a while, or they are recording, but it's dead on the inside. And they just need some refocus, somebody from the outside to say, hey, where are you passionate about? Where can we bring life back into your podcast? So that's where I stay, and I love encouraging people overall. So that's what I do.
Tell us what you know of your audience. who you're serving, who your target is, because again, that's what I get from you. And every time I listen to every episode, you know crystal clear who you're speaking to, because you're like seriously, when I'm listening to you, it sounds like you're talking to me, like one-on-one. I love how you do it. But tell us more about who your audience is. What do you know about them?
Yeah. So my audience is somebody who is, I would say my main person is a female kingdom entrepreneur. And I think it applies to both male and female, but that is who I picture every time I sit down and I record. Is I think of the people that I work with and their questions, their heart. I think of what are those things that they're walking through. Where have I been in the last year or couple of years? Where was I when I first started? What were some of those deep things that I had to walk through, like imposter syndrome? And I pull in, because I know it speaks to me and it speaks to my audience. I pull in scripture and principles that I felt like the Lord had taught me and is teaching me. And so I just kind of hand it off to them because I know it's been helpful for me.
I love how you bring in like real life examples that you're working through yourself. It's you make it feel safe as a listener to interact with your content. It's not like you're like at the finish line hoping everyone will hurry and catch up to you. You're like living it in front of us. So you're very real with your struggles, you're very real with your wins, but at the same time you make it very approachable for people to come, and they don't have to like be perfect to come and enjoy your podcast. Like everyone's at different stages, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I always like to be sensitive to, of course, there's like strategy that is out there, podcast strategy. And there's, this is what most of podcasters, successful podcasters do. But I also try to be really sensitive to, I call it the Holy Spirit override. And like, what is he calling you to do? Your unique voice, because it'll work for you if you're in alignment with what he's calling you to do, your purpose, how you do it, his strategy. And it may not look like what the top podcast consultant or coach may say to do to have a successful podcast. And so I'm glad that that's what you get, is this approachable, I would hope, relaxed place of, in the end, if we're called to use our voice, he's going to open the door and he'll give us strategy versus what maybe the typical strategy is.
Yeah. And what I like too, Kristin, I like how your podcast isn't preachy. Like it's not like a sermon, right? Where you typically think of a minister up there talking at you. It's not like that. Even if you do pull in some form of scripture or biblical principle, you make sure that you explain it in a way that doesn't make people go, I don't get it. I don't understand. That's not my story. That's not where I'm at. Yeah. I still feel welcome here, even though I'm not a believer or I follow a faith thing, but you still make it acceptable and accessible for me as a listener. So I don't feel excluded at all. Because I know sometimes Christian podcasts and faith-based podcasts, it's almost like you have to be in the group to understand what's going on. And if you don't understand, you feel like on the outside going, I don't get it. I don't understand what that means. Yeah. You don't do that. You bring us in.
Oh, good. Yeah. I think, if you just go back to like, Jesus was this incredible entrepreneur, storyteller. Yeah. And so what's cool about that is it applies to everyone. And I mean, even just the concept of everyone deserves to be seen, heard, and known is because of, I was reading the moment when Jesus encountered the woman who had bled for 12 years, and he wouldn't stop with just healing her. He wanted to know her story. And so it was really a beautiful moment for me to see how Jesus was just in my opinion, the Son of God, but he was man, and he just connected heart to heart with people. And I think that that is where we start from, or we can start from, of like just seeing other people's heart, knowing our own heart, but also seeing other people's heart and what they're walking through, and how can we hold space for them, whether that's using your voice to hold space for them, or to interview them, or to give them encouragement in that process of healing.
Yeah. And that's what I'm getting from your show is you're building people up, helping them establish their platform, and then gently nudging them forward into sharing their story through podcasting or whatever that is. You just kind of seem to be that equipping person to help people find their story and give them the confidence to move forward. So any success stories from your time as a podcaster and the people you work with so many people. Is there any stories that kind of come to mind of an example of somebody that came to you and goes, Kristin, I don't think I can do this. And you kind of worked with them and got them to the point where they were able to get out there and share their voice?
Yeah, I have quite a few. Of course, I have like the amazing, there's a couple that went from nothing to their top, 25 in whatever category that they're in. But my favorites are the people that come and they are scared, but they have courage. So they're not quite sure how to get their voice out, but they know that they're called to go press record. So one in particular that just popped into my head is a gal that came to me a couple of years ago, and she was like, I've tried to start a podcast multiple times, but I just can't seem to follow through. And what's interesting is she actually had a physical thing wrong with her voice. And so every now and then she would almost like lose her voice. And so she couldn't talk. It was like an autoimmune thing. And I was able to walk alongside her to finally get her podcast off the ground, but through coaching and saying, your physical struggle to use your voice is actually the most beautiful thing that you could put out there. And you don't have to wait for it to go away. Like, what if you just pressed record and you were hoarse and it was hard to talk, but you put the thing out there, that would actually break open permission for other people to show up in their weakness, whatever it looked like. And she was a powerhouse. I mean, she had so much to share, and she specifically was in the financial space for women, which was unheard of in that time. And to watch her explode and bring empowerment to other women to use their voice in the finance space, like executive level finance space, despite having this like voice thing every now and then. But that was one of my favorites, was to watch her go from the start off and on thing. And then she did it, and she was so successful in changing people's lives and hearing from people how it changed their marriages and how they were able to talk to their husband and open up conversation because they felt empowered to use their voice in a beautiful way, not in a like, point your finger at your husband, but it was like this empowering, like, oh, I do have a voice here. So yeah, that's probably one of my favorite stories because it was such a tangible transformation.
What does that do for you as a pod mom to see somebody come to you like that? Come on, what does that do for you as you kind of shut the email down or shut your computer down, walk away, and you have that moment of staring at the mountains going, I just helped somebody, like somebody actually did the thing. What does it do for you?
Oh my gosh. It honestly makes me feel like, oh, this is what I love doing this. I love that part of my own story of using my voice has now empowered me to help other women and men use their voice as well. But it brings tears to my eyes when moments like that hit. even just yesterday, another podcaster that's been with me for a long time, and she's just really struggled to consistently put out content. And every time that I talk to her, it's another one of those like, man, you are a powerhouse. And if you could just press record and it continue to come out like a flow, it would open up so many other women's hearts and teachers. She works with teachers. And, but yeah, like in that conversation yesterday, it gets me choked up. So
I love it. I love what podcasting can do. Like the connections you can make, the people that, again, you might not normally meet in day-to-day life, even just the two of us. It's just the fact that we can have a conversation like this around something that we both love and the audiences that we serve. I just love everything to do with podcasting. I haven't found a downside to it yet, so I don't think there is one.
I agree.
Yeah. I love it. You're doing a little series right now on your podcast. Talk a little bit about what you're talking about right now on your show.
Yeah. So I just started a series called Find Your Voice, because that's been a big question that I have found, whether it's spoken or not spoken, is how do I find my voice? For some people, it's very easy. They are more extroverted and external processors, but then there's some people that are more of like an internal processor. And so it's hard to get stuff out of your brain. So I'm curious, David, what are you? Are you internal or external processor?
I am so internal. I don't know if that comes across in my show, but I am very internal.
Well, so here's what I've noticed is with internal processors, there's a depth. Not that there's not a depth with external processors, but I feel like it has been mulled around for quite a while that you have really sunk into whatever it is that you're contemplating. So that's what the series is about, is really understanding who we are. That's number one, is we have to know who we are in order to use this external tool. And so that's where I'm starting is what is your identity? And the way that I explain it in my series is, what is that kingdom identity? Yes, you can use scripture to know who you are, but really personally, what is your identity? How do you show up in the world? What's your story? And with all of that beautiful mix of ingredients, you get to present yourself as a unique human being with this powerful gift of a voice. So, yeah. How would you say that you show up in the world?
Wow. Yeah, like going back to the internal thing, the one thing I love about what you said about the depth thing, I've been watching a lot of TV shows right now about like how people pan for gold, like all these gold rush shows and gold hunting and all that stuff. And one of the things is they say is that the gold always wants to go back to the earth. It always wants to get down as low. It's heavy. It wants to get down like wherever it is. It gets caught in ripples and sinks. Gold is always looking for depth and trying to get back to the earth. And it's the idea of the gold rush people is to bring it out and collect it, because that's when it's worth money.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm finding for myself that all of the gold for me always seems to sink, and I have to bring it up and bring it out, right? So that's kind of the things that I wrestle with, is how can I make my content shine? How can I bring the golden parts of what I want to share out? And sometimes as somebody that's an internal thinker, sometimes we get wrapped up in the thought process, and it's having a hard time expressing ourselves. So I wanted to jump back to you, though, for a second. You asked me about being internal, external. What are you? Are you internal, external? What's yours?
I'm internal.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. This would not be my first choice, to use my voice audibly.
Okay.
I would much rather write. I love writing.
Okay.
But I definitely had that same, I know that I am called to use my actual audible voice. And so it's been a challenge for me since 2020 was when I started my own podcast, and started recording kind of the deep things that I had been pondering. But I mean, 2016 is when I started more of the production side of things, which really allowed space for me to gather my own thoughts of, okay, this is how I might say it differently, or from my own perspective. So I do want to throw it back to you, though.
Yeah, I knew you're going to do that.
With the gold analogy, I love that analogy. So how do you help yourself get it out from the depths and onto a podcast? What's your process? Do you write? What do you do?
Well, I'm a musician, so I use music a lot. That's kind of one of my outlets. I think conversation is probably the biggest thing for me. On top of this show, I have 7 other shows. So I have 8 podcasts. So I talk a lot. And my wife's happy because by the time she gets home, I'm talked out and nice and quiet around here. She's pretty happy with that. And I listen better because of hosting and being a host. I found in my early days of podcasting that I would sometimes talk over my guests, which would redirect them and they would never finish their original thought. Yeah. And my audience is like, Dave, can you stop doing that? Because we want to hear Kristin's answer to that question. It was a great question.
Oh, interesting.
But I want to hear Kristin answer it. Don't stop her. Let her finish her question. So anyway, so I'm a better listener, and I can communicate better and bring out those things that I feel could be helpful, right? So the biggest thing for me is all around community. That's the one thing I really like. One of the questions that somebody posed to me a little while ago, Kristin, I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. They said to me, how do you want to be known? So if you were to leave the room, okay, Kristin, and you're at a family function or you're with your friends, your community, you kind of sneak out for a little bit and everybody kind of realizes you're not there. They can speak freely about you. What do you want them to say about you in your absence that reflects their opinion of who you are and how you show up in this world? As you're thinking about that, my answer to this is I want to be known as Dave was a collector of people.
Oh,
that's what I want to be. I want people to go, yeah, whenever Dave had the opportunity, he reached out, he made connections, he grew his community, and he really did truly care about the people in his life. Not just his family, but as many people as possible. He collected people. Just like people collect things, I want to collect people. So that's kind of what I want to be known for. And that's my goal. And the reason why I think it's important to have a goal like that is that's something to shoot for. So then I reverse engineer, starting at the end, I want to work my way backwards and go, well, how do I get to that goal? So I'm going to start doing this, 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 and this, which will lead me to the success that I'm hoping to reach down the road. So I'm reverse engineering it, and now I'm working towards the goal I've set for myself. So everyone leaves. You leave the room, Kristin. People are now freely able to talk about Kristin Chadwick. What do you hope that they say about you?
I think there's a few things. Well, one, I hope that every person that I encounter feels seen, heard, and known. I mean, that phrase is important to me. And such a tagline in all that I do, whether it's parenting, marriage, friendships, podcasting. So I want my kids to know that they're valued, and every person that I encounter. So I hope that they would feel that way. Also, holding space. She was great at holding space and not judging, kindness. And I think the core is I hope that people experience something in their own heart that makes them curious about maybe God's better than we think. Yeah. That would probably be my 3 top picks right there.
So can I give you my answer to the Kristin Chadwick question?
I would love it.
Okay. So if you were to leave the room, Kristin, so you can plug your ears right now or something, I would say the depth of character that Kristin Chadwick shows up in this world is something that brings people to her and makes people stay.
Yeah.
And it shows in your podcast. It shows in how you show up in this world. It shows in how you deliver your content. There's nothing fake about Kristin Chadwick. There's no, even it comes through in my ears as I listen to your show. That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm feeling. So if that's your goal, I want you to know that you're hitting it. So
yes. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that.
And that's the one thing I think, Kristin, as podcasters, I think a lot of people don't think this way. They think about creating content. They think about making artwork. They think about building a website. But then where's the you part in this? Can you get a little bit deeper on who you are so that you have a crystal clear idea of who you are every episode to episode, every interaction, every email, every voicemail, everything that you do shows. And I think that's one thing we don't talk enough about in podcasting is we need to figure out who we are. To your point earlier, you got to know who you are.
Yeah. And I think that it comes with lots of counseling and awareness and just life and being able to process. And you are right. I don't want more information out there. I don't want to just keep creating content for the sake of creating content. There's enough of that. And I hope that, and pray that people who listen to my podcast or any of my podcasters, that they walk away with some sort of application and transformation on a heart level, very heart-centered. Yeah.
Okay, let's try something. Are you ready?
Okay.
Okay, so we have a new podcaster that just walked into the room. They want to start a show, Kristin.
Okay.
We're just going to go back and forth, some really quick tips for our podcasters. Brand new, they're listening. They're right here with us. And again, you're really good at this whole thing about talking to your audience. So you and I are just going to go back and forth, just throw out some really quick, simple little tips that we would suggest to a new podcaster to build them up. You ready? You can go first.
I'm ready.
Okay. Just whatever comes to mind. And then as soon as you do one, I'm going to do one. We're going to go back and forth lightning round and just give them a bunch of what we think is some good tips and ideas to help encourage them with your show. Are you ready?
Yep. I would start by asking, what do you love to talk about? And what do people come to you and ask your advice on?
What is the thing that you talk about so often that people roll their eyes in their head and go, oh no, there they go again?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, here's another one from you. Go ahead.
Ooh. Okay. What did you need to hear 5 years ago?
Oh, okay. My one tip is to make it as super easy for your audience to come into your world and make it super difficult for them to leave.
Ooh. Oh, that's real good. I love that. I might have to sit with that one. Okay.
Okay.
Next would be, oh man, I just had mine and it just left because of that. It's an awesome statement. If you have another one, go for it because I got to find mine.
Podcast for an audience of one. Don't worry about the numbers. Don't be so concentrated on that. Here's the reason behind it for you, Kristin. When I talk to people, I said, if you walk into a room, there's 300 chairs and there's only 20 people there. Would you come up to the podium, up to the mic and go, oh, I'm sorry, everybody. I was expecting more people. Let's cancel this. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Let's come back another time. Those people showed up for you. Don't dismiss them. Don't look over their heads at the empty seats and get discouraged. The people are sitting in front of you. And it might only be one person, but focus on them because they showed up for you. There's 1,000 other things they could do. Yeah. But they showed up for you. So don't talk over their heads. Don't dismiss them. Yeah. Pour your life into them.
Yes. So good. Yep. Totally agree. Yeah. Okay, let's see. So next one would be just press record. Yes, have a message. Yes, have an idea of who you're talking to, but sometimes we learn clarity as we go forward. And a lot of times we can get stuck on perfection of it has to be just right. I have to know exactly where I'm going. And sometimes it's just pressing record and seeing where does your heart sing, what's connecting with people, and just the pressure's off. Like, just press record, make it awkward. You're going to be awkward. Everybody has an awkward first episode, and trust the process.
My closing one for this little segment would be dream out loud. Even sometimes the dreams that you have are not yours to fulfill, but you're meant to speak them out, and maybe someone else will pick up your dream and run with it. So dream out loud.
Ooh, that's good.
You're closing one for this little section.
Oh, I have to close? Okay.
I'm putting you on the spot. I love it.
I would say it takes courage. It does take courage to show up over and over again. And in the moments when you're not motivated, that remembering that somebody is waiting to hear something encouraging from you.
Yeah.
And doing it for just that one person, like you said, the one person, even if it's one person, that it's worth it to press record and to push through whatever mindset stuff that's going on, or you're just not motivated. I promise in those episodes, those are the ones that usually are the most powerful, when you're like, I do not want to press record.
Yeah. Right. Because I think what we're battling against with that audience of one idea, Kristin, is when people go into a Facebook group and they see people posting that they have like 100,000 downloads in 5 seconds. And they're like, well, there's no luck. There's no way I'm going to be successful.
Right.
So who cares what I have to say? And then imposter syndrome comes in and doubts come in, and you're just like, I'm just not going to do this. I'm just going to walk away from this. There's no way I can do that. Right. I'm getting 5 downloads. Like, I must be terrible. No. So I just feel like we're kind of fighting an uphill battle with these numbers that people throw around in Facebook groups and in conversations. And I just want people to realize that the majority of people have a small, dedicated listener base that show up on a regular basis. And you might not hit those 100,000 downloads, and that's okay. It's really okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. In my first podcast, one of the main, as a producer, one of the main things that the hosts used to say over and over again regarding parenting and marriage, but it applies to so much, is stay in your lane. Work on your stuff. Don't look to the right and to the left. Yes, for inspiration, you can do that. But also, at the end of the day, this is between you and your listener. And do you think that they care that you don't have, 100,000 downloads in a month? Like, they don't care. It's impacting them. And they care that you're releasing an episode consistently, and whatever that looks like, once a month, twice a month, weekly, daily. They're the ones that are being impacted. And so staying in your lane is such a great way to continue to just focus on the things that are right in front of you.
Anything that you've given up on in your podcast journey that maybe you did more in the beginning and you're like, it doesn't serve me anymore, or I'm not going to go down that path. I've redirected myself, and something that used to mean something to me is not really as important anymore?
That's a great question. I mean, the thing that I feel like I'm always trial and error, what is working, what's not working, what's in alignment with what season I'm in my business, in my life, in my family. So that's one thing I would say, is that I have really tried to hone in on like what is actually the most impactful and the most advantageous for everyone. And really giving up on the rest of like the have to or the shoulds of podcasting. I think one practical tip is like my transition with my podcast, podcast coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs, was I started with a cutesy name, thinking that people would get it, but nobody could find my podcast because number one, it was spelled wrong. It was called Holistic Podcasting, which was a spinoff of my first podcast, Holistic Hearts. And I thought that people would get that connection, but people that were brand new to me had no idea that I had a different podcast. So changing the name of my podcast to actually serve the people that are trying to find a podcast coach in the Kingdom entrepreneur space was actually the most advantageous shift for me. And that was helpful to kind of lay down my title, but also still have the thread line of I am a holistic podcast coach. I care about your faith. I care about your family. I care about your podcast, your business, your health, all of those things. And it doesn't have to be the forefront of my podcast title. It can be on the back end in my knowing, in my values, and how I show up.
What do you, if I came to you as a new podcaster, I'm looking to start and I'm getting advice from you, the whole idea is about an intro and an outro for my show. I did an episode recently and I talked about the fact that when you think about your typical audience, I'm trying to imagine, even with the many episodes that you have, there's somebody today that's going to press play for the first time. They have never heard your show before. Probably going to start with the most recent episode that just came out. They don't know your back catalog. They're just here first time. They're like, walk through the door. They're like, what's this? I'm going to press play. So I'm kind of instructing people that I work with that think of your intro as something for a new listener who doesn't know who you are. So tailor your intro for them. Because most of the people who know you and have heard all of your episodes, my hands in the air, heard all of your episodes, we know your intro. So we're ready to jump to the meat of the podcast. Just jump right in, right?
Yeah.
And then treat your outro more for your long-term listeners, because they're the ones who stick all the way to the end. They listen to every episode and they don't jump and leave halfway through. They love your stuff. Again, my hands in the air. They listen all the way to the end of the episode. So that's the people, when you do your outro, speak to your long-term listener in the outro, but in the intro, speak to a new person.
Yeah.
And try to tailor the two. They're a little different. You can't just treat them the same, right? When you lead people as far as a good intro and what makes a good outro, what kind of other things would you add to that would be your thoughts?
I love that explanation of kind of a welcome to everyone, new and old, but also it kind of reminds me of like, if you're going to meet somebody for coffee, you don't just jump right into the topic. You slowly are like, hi, I'm Kristin and I'm a mom of 4. And, you know, you like introduce them slowly into what the actual conversation is going to be about. And then it makes sense that the outro, you're going to leave with a hug. You're going to leave, you know, just a call to action that helps them continue the conversation. That's what I suggest to my clients is make sure your outro is something that if they want to do something more with you, that they have a plan to, okay, oh, I want to download that free downloadable PDF that they mentioned in the podcast today, or I want to join their Facebook group, or I would love to book a one-on-one call with David. Any of those kind of actions where they can take the relationship to the next level.
Yeah, and I love the idea that an intro and an outro should be more focused on the listener and less focused on us as a podcaster. So I do love the fact that people can leave us ratings and reviews. That's amazing, and I'm thrilled every time that happens. But when I ask for that as my only ask of my listeners, it's kind of in a way a little self-serving because they really don't get anything out of that. Yes, they're going to help my podcast grow. That's true. But I love giving them something that helps them or benefits them. So like having time with you in your calendar, that benefits them. So those kind of calls to action, I think, are really good. So I love that kind of thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. Again, Kristin, I love having you here because, again, I'm going to listen to you again tonight when I go back to work. So this is really fun. For your podcast, you talked about the fact that you rebranded and all of that. What did you learn about your podcast or about you in the rebranding process beyond the name of your show? What kind of things did you learn through the process of rebranding?
I think overall, there's a quote by a guy named Rory Vaden, that he says diluted focus equals diluted results.
Mm.
And with changing the name of my podcast, I think the main thing is I got really clear on who I was serving. So coming back to, our beginning of our conversation is I know that this is who I'm called to serve. And if it blesses other people outside of that niche, then awesome. That's amazing. And I know that this is like my sweet spot because this is where I've been. This is in real time what I'm walking through. I am an entrepreneur. I'm building a business. I have a podcast. I have a family. I have faith is really important to me. And how do I bring God into that conversation of all of it and build on top of that concept is really important to me. So I think when I shifted from holistic podcasting to podcast coaching for kingdom entrepreneurs, it almost gave me more freedom to be more me in the conversations that I brought to the recordings.
Yeah. I can tell you it works. It works as a listener. I love it. Anything else around building community? Any other tips for podcasters on how we can get our listeners to identify themselves so they actually come out of the woodwork and we see emails or voice messages or something from them? How do you build community around your podcast?
Yeah, this has been the ever long question since I've been in podcasting in 2016 through 2020. It was like the start of this, like, how do we get engagement? And we even had a top show, and engagement was so hard to connect with people and actually know who was listening. And I think it's just going to be a constant conversation of, I know for me and my listeners, it's social media. It is Facebook group. It is an Instagram post. It is really offering a space for them to come and try out something deeper, like come and be a part of my membership or come and do the pod class that I teach every month. And so having those opportunities where they can come, kind of like your podcast meetup where you have opportunities for people to come, then you get to see their faces of who they are. And, a lot of my episodes are based off of the people that I'm connected with in real life inside of my membership. And so it just kind of feeds that personal experience. And so then they refer somebody. So then I know they're listening and we'll talk about it on our membership call, group call. So yeah, it's kind of a trial and error and kind of figuring out where your listener is and where do they hang out. And until we can get to some sort of interactive podcast episode app thing that is mainstream, like Apple or in Spotify. I know there are apps out there that you can interact and make comments underneath episodes like Podchaser, and you could do it on YouTube. But I feel like in the podcasting space, until that happens, we've got to go out and really find where we can connect to our listener, whether it's email, social media, Zoom opportunities, all of that. So
Kristin, before we go, I had you for a little while and I know you got lots to do. You got to record more episodes because I'm waiting to listen. Tell everybody about your show again, where we're going to find your show. We'll always have links as well, so people can go right there. But just tell us a little bit about maybe what else is coming up in the next few episodes, or what do you got planned? I'd love to kind of wrap up with that as well.
Yeah. So again, my podcast is called Podcast Coaching for Kingdom Entrepreneurs. And this series is really special, Find Your Voice. And so I'm really excited about that one because I have an accompanying free journal that goes with it. And then after that, I'm going to have a couple more guests talk about your voice and what has worked for them. And then we're going to take a little break in December. But we'll be back with conversations on email marketing, on funnels, on what do you do to re-engage when you have been really discouraged. So lots of good conversations coming up.
Excellent. And you're going to put the fun in funnels, right?
Absolutely.
Of course you are. Good. Awesome. I like
Yes.
that. Good. Kristin, I love having you here. Again, I really enjoy your podcast. And as a community member of yours, listening in and cheering you on, thank you for what you do in the podcasting space. If somebody wants to work with you, Kristin, they can go through your website as well then.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
good to do. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Just podcast coaching for kingdomentrepreneurs.com. And then you can fill out a little contact form there or find me on social media, Kristin Fields Chadwick. I love having conversations on there too and answering questions. I love answering questions. No question is too elementary or advanced. If I don't know, I will send you to somebody who might know.
There you go. It's a great, everyone, you have to go listen to Kristin's podcast. It's amazing. And like I said at the beginning, Kristin is a great example of knowing who your audience is. I think a lot of us could do better at figuring out who our audience is. So we're not just talking to everyone, because it's really hard to get deep with those people if you don't really have a target. So Kristin knows exactly who she's talking to, and it shows in every episode. So if you want a great example of that, go to Kristin's show and listen to any episode. Pick anyone, and you'll hear it every time. She's very consistent with that. So Kristin, thank you so much for making time to be on this show. Again, a really big fan. I really love what you're doing. Keep going.
Thank you, David. It has been an honor to have this conversation with you.
Excellent. Everyone, go listen. Kristin's great. Thanks, Kristin.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast all the way through to the end. I love having these great guest co-hosts on the show to share their podcast with you. You have some homework to do. And what I'm asking of you is to go check out our featured guest co-host today. Go over and listen to their podcast. The links are always in the show notes. And I'd love for you to go and give them your love and support. And I think if we can all do that for each other, podcasting will be a lot more fun for all of us. So it's time to do what you've asked others to do for you. It's time to do for this guest co-host. Links in the show notes. Go over and check out their show and leave them a review, do the follow, go listen to their episodes in full, the entirety of an episode, which again shows to the apps that it's a good podcast because you're going there and you're staying to the end. It's probably one of the best ways you can help a podcaster grow their audience and be shown to more people is by simply going and listening wherever you listen to the very end, like you're doing right now here. This is the perfect way to signal to wherever you're listening on, this is a podcast worth promoting. And all of the apps want you to stay on as long as possible. So go over and listen to our guest co-host episode and leave them some feedback. If they have a buy me a coffee, send them a coffee. If they have a speak pipe, send them a voice message. If they have an email, send them an email. If they're on Instagram, send them a direct message. Do something to support our guest co-hosts. They've given up their time to be here with you, to be here with me, and we can give that back to them with time and attention, our love, our support. Thank you for doing all that for me as well. Here on the How to Podcast series, we'll talk to you soon for our next episode.